Alright, let's get this started. This is the Legend of Zelda console games rant/breakdown. I already wrote an article for this. There are unfortunately typos. However, I don't exactly have all the time in the world to devote to this, so I mean, if I could start getting paid for it, then yes, I would absolutely love to do this. However, in the meantime, it is what it is. So, I am going to narrate this. If you would like to read along, the links to the article are in the description below, and it's on Medium. Say that now. Let's get this started. The Legend of Zelda. So let's just get this out of the way now. A Link to the Past is the first Zelda game that set up the vast world linear gameplay 3-6 trope of the future 3D Zelda games. That does not go to Ocarina of Time. That said, let's start from the beginning. The Legend of Zelda. NES. The original NES Legend of Zelda was a classic masterpiece. It had an expansive open world that you could earnestly explore with no real direction, tackle the dungeons in any real order you wanted, and pretty much do anything from the word go. It was also the first game to implement a save feature, which is obviously a big deal with modern games today, as almost every game now has some sort of feature to record your progress of gameplay. It set the bar for what a good game really needed to be awesome. The Adventures of Link. NES. At this point in time, Nintendo hadn't really discerned the definitive Zelda experience yet. I mean, they wanted to try new things, and as such, they went forward with a new take on the original by making it a side-scroller. Now, many people have criticized this game for being too hard or too different, but honestly, I'd say that what makes it stand out more. Now, I've played it, and I've gotten pretty dang far. I can attest to the fact that it is very difficult, but this doesn't exactly qualify it to be a bad game. The controls are tight, the combat isn't impossible, and the all-around look of the game is pretty solid. I mean, sure, it looks like a bad Final Fantasy mixed with Castlevania, but that's just because they didn't really know what else to do other than rehash the old game with new stuff, something they do now. They just wanted to keep it fresh, and not give you the same tired crap they already gave you. Props. A Link to the Past. SNES. As cited in the first paragraph, A Link to the Past set the standard for almost all of the future 3D Zelda games. You get 2 to 3 things, you get the Master Sword, and you get 5 to 6 more things, and then you can fight the final boss. Therein lies the vast world linear gameplay 3-6 trope. But don't get me wrong, that's not to say A Link to the Past was a bad game by any means. If anything, it's the first true Zelda game with really tight controls, sword tactics other than just stab in the general direction you're facing, multiple bottles for fairies, bees, potions, etc., more layered graphics to convey depth, and more intricate dungeon designs other than just a simple grid. Now, a lot of the shortcomings that A Link to the Past improved on were obviously due to system limitations, so it's not that big of a deal or a downside. It just is what it is. That said, A Link to the Past has gone on to be the absolute favorite of Zelda players worldwide, even if it's just for the 2D titles, and for good reason. Now you can finally explore a fleshed out world, albeit at the cost of somewhat being told when and where you could go to certain places, and then there were even more nooks and crannies to investigate for heart pieces and money. Ocarina of Time, N64. Following in the footsteps of Mario before it, Link and Zelda came alive in 3D rendered polygonal form, now with 3D combat, worlds, and enemies. No longer do you just move left or right, or up and down. You're now moving left or right, up, down, and forward and backward. You can do backflips and somersaults, jump attacks, and actually aim your arrows and hook shots. It's crazy! It continues the trend A Link to the Past started by tasking you to get 3 stones, then, after getting the Master Sword, you have to go get 5 to 6 more medallions before you can fight Ganon. While not exactly a bad setup for a game's achievements, it's still just piggybacking off of A Link to the Past. This would basically make Ocarina of Time an A Link to the Past clone, but in 3D, and swapping out Light World for the past or present world, and Dark World for the future worlds, or timelines. And not bad, it's just an observation. Most people I hear or read about who talk about 3D Zelda games like to say they're just copying Ocarina of Time, but really they're copying A Link to the Past. Still, despite this, Ocarina of Time is still a really solid entry. Ocarina of Time 3D, 3DS. It's the exact same game, but with updated graphics, controls, and it includes the mirrored Master Quest with harder dungeons that is unlocked after the initial playthrough. Majora's Mask, Nintendo 64. Majora's Mask used to be the black sheep of the Zelda titles, and maybe in a way it still is. I used to shun it in comparison to Ocarina of Time due to the fact that you had to beat the game in 3 days. Always turned me off from wanting to play it. It always baffled me as a kid that you could possibly beat a game in 3 days. It was far beyond me. Looking back, it was stupid of me, especially when the game is such a knockout sensation. It's true, you only have 3 days to beat the game, but you're given the Ocarina of Time. Since its previous installment, the Ocarina can now fast forward time, reset it back to the first day, and even slow down the passage of time, effectively doubling the time available to complete a given task. When you beat a dungeon, you gain a mask of the boss to signify its defeat. This works for you so that when you reset the time limit, you don't have to rebeat the temple again. You also don't lose key items via reset either, but you will lose the ammo. But this is a general overview, not exactly a full-on specifics review, so moving on. Majora's Mask 3D, 3DS. This one is by far my favorite 3D Zelda adventure currently on the 3DS, because it supports the Circle Pad Pro attachment so that you can have additional camera controls. Much better than Ocarina of Time 3D in that respect, so that you're not constantly hitting L to recenter the camera to where you need it to face. Wind Waker, Nintendo GameCube. Glorious angels come down from the heavens to trumpet this game's triumphant arrival on the console of tiny justice that is the Nintendo GameCube. I remember when this game was announced and shown off, it got so much backlash from people that hated on the cartoony artwork, when it ultimately led to really strengthening the emotions and facial expressions characters were able to convey without being too heavy-handed. The controls were super tight and responsive. The free-roaming camera later carried over to the Majora's Mask 3D remake and Twilight Princess I'll talk about next. Made for an amazingly fresh way to take in your surroundings without actually having to move Link either at all, or too much. If you pan the camera around and just let it sit on Link's face, he'd often look around the room at something that would lead to a solution or discovery. It was a very fresh take on the Zelda franchise. However, despite all of these good things Wind Waker brought to the table, and there's so much more I haven't even worried about touching on, it still had the same basic formula of 2-3 things to collect, Master Sword, and 4 or 5 more things to collect, and you can face again. Much to the game's credit, and bear in mind, it's been a while since I've actually played it. They actually intersperse some extra tasks to complete here and there that are relatively integral to the plot, rather than just something extra you can do or should do to get an extra weapon or upgrade. So there's always some cool sort of thing you can end up doing. Not to mention, also, that sweet 100th floor dungeon? Yes, please. Anyway, I could go on and on about Wind Waker, but my bias is showing, so Wind Waker HD, Wii U. Updated graphics and controls, take selfies, sell faster, and some animations are faster. Twilight Princess, Nintendo GameCube. Also the Wii. This is the Legend of Zelda experience everyone wanted out of Wind Waker. More realistic depictions of characters, an adult Link, gritty atmosphere and environments with really wicked looking enemies and bosses. If you were a wimp of a kid, this game was giving you nightmares. It has one of the strangest before the hero kind of setups in the Zelda game, because Link was actually a rancher working to herd sheep, or goats, or whatever, before being tasked with saving his friends and, then later, the Kingdom of Hyrule. It was nice though, humble even. The Nintendo GameCube version of the game was far more definitive, in my opinion, than its Wii port, even though that's probably the one more people remember or think of when they think the Twilight Princess, even though the Wii version had the exact same graphics as the GameCube version. But I digress. Boasting some of the most detailed environments, menacing looking enemies, demonic bosses, and funny little items in any Zelda game, it was one of the edgiest entries we've ever gotten since Zelda 2. And that game had prostitutes! Sexy, 8-bit, pixelated prostitutes. Twilight Princess HD, Wii U. Updated graphics and controls, has both the Nintendo GameCube and the Wii versions, with the Wii version as the Hero mode with increased difficulty. Skyward Sword, Wii. Oh boy, we're finally here! I'll have to admit, I haven't actually played much of Skyward Sword. When I did, the sensor bar was always eating batteries like candy, and would occasionally shut off mid-gameplay. The Wii motion controller would have to be recalibrated from time to time, the swordplay was awkward as all hell, and the overall gameplay was just obnoxious backtracking. And not like in Twilight Princess, where you got to do it in a completely different setting as before, but just as a do it again kind of thing. Someday, not anytime soon mind you, I'll go back to visit this game. Now, it did get relatively high reviews at its time of release, and from what I played, I can say it was a very beautiful game, and the idea of upgrading your weapons and armor at your own pace by collecting monster jobs gave it a very cool RPG kind of feel. It's nice when you don't have to wait until you get to a certain dungeon or whatever, find the one treasure chest with the one item, and you can take it back to the blacksmith and finally upgrade your sword. I'm looking at you, A Link Between Worlds. I don't know. I wouldn't exactly say I hate it, but I'm like 99% of the way there, just based on my previous experience with it. And who knows, maybe with an optimal setup and actual patience, I'll come to love the game like so many others I know do. But not today. Zelda U, for the Nintendo Wii U and apparently the NX. And that brings us to where we are today. Now, I'm intentionally leaving out portable titles, because they're in a league all on their own. So, from the original Zelda on the NES to Skyward Sword, on the Wii. Where does that leave us now on Zelda U? Well, if the small things we've been told by the game's developers are any indication, we can sort of expect a world as vast, if not more so, than Wind Waker's overworld, but with considerably less water. It should also be as lively, if not more so, than Majora's Mask, with even enemies behaving differently at certain times of day, much like in Xenoblade X. And, last but not least, it'll be as open-ended and exploration-inviting as the original NES Legend of Zelda. Now, I know I might be making it sound way better than it's actually going to be, but considering it's going to be the main focus for Nintendo at 2016's E3, I'd say it's pretty fair that they're going absolutely balls to the wall for this adventure, or at least that's what I'm hoping for. And there you go. That's my albeit brief summary of the whole Zelda series. Well, the console releases anyway. If you liked hearing my narration, why not tell me what you want to hear me narrate next in the comments section below? And if you liked the video, you could hit the like button. I mean, or not, that's cool too. And hey, you could also subscribe. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to, but... If you pan the camera around and just let it sit on Link's face, he'd off... Did I really write that? Okay, cool.